I'm now going to hand you over to our representatives from Northern Ireland. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Lewis and Councillor Henry Reilly. Over to you, chaps.
Well, thank you very much indeed for the kind invitation from UKIP and EDF to attend this seminar, for want of a better name. You'll see that the start of our presentation really is the conflict in Northern Ireland has essentially been about national identity. And I'm obviously from the Unionist community. I'm from a Protestant background. And I look at the British Isles as an island archipelago that is a completely natural geographical entity, that we share a common language, common basic ethnicity, we common legal system. Our history's interlocked for thousands of years in many ways. So I see it as a completely natural thing to be part of the British Isles and to be a British citizen. Now, there are other people who live in Northern Ireland who will say, I'm not British. I see you as a foreign entity in my mother Ireland. So we struggled with that conflict of identities for years, really. And then in 1998, we did get an agreement of types, what was called the Good Friday Agreement. And the ethos of the agreement was that Northern Ireland will and remain part of the United Kingdom, provided the majority of people who live in Northern Ireland want that. But there were concessions made to the nationalist community who feel themselves to be exclusively Irish, in that there would not be a majority government set up in Stormont, that it would be a forced coalition. It has worked to a degree, but there has still been this latent violent republicanism that manifests itself in many ways. Post-agreement, we obviously had the Omagh car bomb. It was the single biggest attack of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. 29 people were killed, and that was caused by what was known as an IRA splinter group. You'll see the photos, the devastation that they were still able to inflict what they called outside mainstream republicanism. So even though we had this agreement in place, we still have this body that has the technology and capability and the will to inflict a lot of pain and hurt on the people of Northern Ireland. That's just scenes from that bomb. Then we move on and we get, it leaves the Omagh after a period of respite really from terrorism. Then we move into Castlewellan, where we get more bombs, again from what are called splinter Republican groups claiming responsibility. Then we move on a step up in the violence when we had two soldiers about to go on duty in Afghanistan. They were in their barracks in Antrim and had ordered a pizza. And when they went to collect the pizza from the pizza delivery van, these IRA terrorists walked out and killed them, riddled them with bullets. And that did cause terrible anxiety and anxiousness right across Northern Ireland. In many ways, it had a unifying effect because the moderate Catholic community really do not want that type of thing, and they were appalled. And it did bring the communities together in many ways. Then we went on to Constable Carroll, the first member of the newly formed PSNI. He was killed when contacted by a lady whose house had been attacked. It was what's known in Northern Ireland as a come-on attack. And the police officer went out, and a young man stepped out and shot the poor police officer dead. Again, Catholic police officer, tremendous feeling of sympathy for him, brought the entire community in Northern Ireland together. And that runs on from the previous police force. 300 members of the RUC were killed, 9,000 injured in paramilitary attacks, mostly by the Provisional IRA. It actually made the police in Northern Ireland the most dangerous police force to be a member of anywhere in the world. And you'll see in the next slide some of the police officers who were killed, some of the over 300 police officers. In the pre-1980 peace agreement, we had 3,225 people were killed. between 1969 and the ceasefires in 1994. 1,896 of these were killed by Republican paramilitaries, 935 by loyalists, only 316 by the army, and 52 by the police. Now, you would think the way that the media had presented the troubles in Northern Ireland, that the army run and the police run roughshod over everybody and just shot the place up, that clearly wasn't the case. There was tremendous restraint shown by the security services in Northern Ireland throughout the troubles. In terms of proportionality, if you look at what happened in Northern Ireland with the fatalities we experienced, it would be the same as 270 9/11s. So it gives if you can try and comprehend that, the pain that has been inflicted on the Northern Ireland community by the troubles over the 35 years. So when we take all that into account, we have to then try and say, how are we going to build this peace? We have a shared future document that says the vision for a future of Northern Ireland is for a peaceful, inclusive, prosperous, stable and fair society, firmly founded on the achievement of reconciliation, tolerance and mutual trust, and the protection and vindication of human rights for all. It is to be founded on partnership, equality and mutual respect as a basis of good relationships. And that's from the shared future document. And within this time of post-conflict, where we recognise that we still have a residual effect of trouble going on, we still have to build the peace. And in this, we can do that in a number of ways. But the main way must be to change the mindset of children. And the thesis of this discussion was the radicalisation of children. Now, within what we can call the moderate communities in Northern Ireland, we will have cultural identities. In my community, I say my community broadly, we will play football, have band music. You'll see marching bands, that tradition, the Orange Order, that tradition. Within the Catholic community, you'll have Irish cultural identity, Gaelic football, that type of thing. And most of those people will coexist very, very easily. But there is, within Sinn Féin, and I'm naming Sinn Féin because they are the people behind it, you will have a very, very radical radicalisation of children. And if anybody can see that, I don't know, you can't see, but it's pictures from the Tycullion Centre in Crossmaglen, or in Mullabon in South Armagh. And you will see, this is a centre that was built with money supplied by the European Union under a peace heading. The centre is called the Tycullion Centre. It's in South Armagh. It was built with EU peace money on the premise that it would attract tourists. Now, some people might say on the premise that it might attract terrorists, but the critical aspect of this is that while the bulk of people in Northern Ireland, the bulk of ordinary Protestants and ordinary Catholics want to move on, want to leave the violent past behind, we don't have to surrender our cultural identity, we don't have to surrender our nationality, whatever way we perceive it, but we have to leave the violence behind, the physical force tradition that Sinn Féin IRA have fostered and cultured for generations. And even though we have these people in our government now, as and the First Minister, Deputy First Minister, we have them as ministers controlling education, we still have this section of Sinn Féin that wants to do this type of thing. Now, one of the ways of actually stopping it is to try and get the EU to wise up. The way that Sinn Féin can get this money is they are very adept at making applications for funding. Probably the best anywhere in the British Isles in terms of communities. And this Tycullion Centre has benefited from local and international public funding. The special EU programmes body, SEUPB, has confirmed that previous award of peace funding of £42,000 and a current award of £264,500 for this specific tourist-related activity. Now, We have done all our investigations. The only activity that we can see that occurs there is children being brought in, handed deactivated weapons that were apparently used to kill soldiers and police and to kneecap innocent Catholics and Protestants that they didn't like. So why is this being done? It's not been done in a historical context. We believe that it's been done to condition children for the next generation. If these people who believe in the physical force tradition of physical force against people they don't agree with, if they don't get their way, they'll have these young people conditioned and waiting in the wings to pick up the weapons again. So we believe it is critical that this is stopped. The photographs of the children were actually posted on Facebook by a Catholic parent who had seen them and thought, my goodness, how can we allow our children to be conditioned in this way? On to the next one on the EU funds ones. Now, within Northern Ireland, where it's causing a lot of problems as well, is the fact that people from the unionist community will see physical force republicanism, the advocates of violence, and the people who actually served lengthy jail terms for killing what I call a totally innocent person, whether it was a policeman, a soldier, or a farmer, because they wanted his land. This is the perception that it's creating within the unionist community. You'll see that was at a recent rally over some event, but they've actually went to the bother of creating this banner that says EU funds Republican terrorists. That's the perception that's been created within Northern Ireland by the misuse of EU money. And I don't like using the word EU money because the UK, we are net contributors to the European Union in financial terms, so it's actually our money. But then we go on to the people who deal with the victims of the past. Now, we have this IRA group called COISTA. Now, this group would be behind a lot of these photographs of the children, whatever. They've already received 1.3 million to support ex-IRA prisoners, even though the organisation was in breach of company law by failing to file accounts for a number of years. They still got money. Now, if you go to the groups who actually represent what I call the real victims, the people like FAIR, which is Families Acting for Innocent Relatives, like MAST in my own area, which is More in Action for Survivors of Terrorism. If you go to those people, what has happened to them? They've actually had their funding denied. Now, the fact that the people who represent the truly innocent victims had their money denied because of very spurious reasons by this special programs funding agency. Again, that is creating more animosity. It's creating distrust between communities. So the best thing that the European Union can do is to pull out of all these types of issues. If the money that's flowing into Northern Ireland to try and heal wounds, if it can't be allocated fairly and it can't be allocated in a way that facilitates the true victims, then it's pointless. And all it will do is continue to open old wounds. The COISTA group, this COISTA group, which is the group that represents former IRA prisoners, not only did it get its previous funding, while all the other, the genuine victims groups have had their finance cut, they've just been allocated last week £5.25 million for peacekeeping projects. Now, some of these peacekeeping projects undoubtedly will be more children being brought into this Tycullion Centre in South Armagh. How do we bring this forward? How do we bring sense to the people involved? Now, anybody from Northern Ireland would have seen Spotlight last night, which is a regional BBC TV programme. And we had a very effective exposure of the proposed, what we call the IRA shrine that's going to go with the former Maze prison site. And with maybe one or two exceptions, there was nobody in favour of it. From the Catholic community, from the, especially from the Protestant community, and especially from the people who suffered bereavements through terrorism. There's practically no support, but yet £18 million of EU peace money is going in to build this peace centre that no one wants. Now, what will this peace centre involve? It will involve the cell being retained where Bobby Sands died. The old hospital wing of the prison where the hunger strikers were treated before they died. Now, the perception within unionism, within the Protestant community, and within moderate nationalism, the moderate Catholic community, is that this will undoubtedly become a shrine to the IRA. And in future years, who is going to be influenced by that shrine? It will be the young children who are trailed in by groups like this Coistia and radicalised for future generations. That is why we should not allow these huge amounts of EU funding to be allocated in this way. Now, unfortunately, the IRA shrine has actually been agreed by the First and First Minister's office. You will see the politicians in senior office really do seem to be quite out of touch with the ordinary people on the ground, because they say, no, it will not be a shrine, it's going to be a tourism mecca. People are going to go and want to see this. Maybe some people will want to, but I think most normal people won't want to see where men lay in naked and spread excrement on the walls of prison cells. I just can't see that being something that people will be interested in. But this was in the local main regional newspaper, the newsletter, this week. And it shows the true nature of the tours that will be conducted at the Mace prison, in that it was purely just a Republican propaganda unit. So you can see why we are very, very disappointed with the way that European Union money is being spent to propagate the radicalisation of children in Northern Ireland. And if you even look at the European framework decision on a victim, as a UKIP councillor, I don't like the European Union. I want national self-determination for the United Kingdom. But the European Union actually has a better definition of a victim of terrorism than my own country does. And in Northern Ireland, we have a belligerent Sinn Féin IRA that will not accept that the people who were killed by car bombs and by bombs, the people in Omagh, are the true victims. They believe that if somebody was going out to plant a bomb to kill somebody, and a soldier had seen that guy and shot him, well, they believe that that terrorist is a victim on exactly the same level as the victims who were killed in Omagh, or Enniskillen, or the two young soldiers we showed earlier. So, again, that's causing a lot of distress and animosity within the communities in Northern Ireland. So we need as a people really to try and get sense into the funding bodies. This young lady is Mary Travers, Anne Travers. Anne's sister, Mary Travers, was coming out of Mass. She was her father was a judge in Northern Ireland in the 1980s, Alan. And they were coming out of Mass. They were a Catholic family, well-respected Catholic family, lived in South Belfast. Coming out of Mass on a Sunday morning, IRA terrorists walked out, shot the father and shot the sister dead. Now, the lady that was involved in shooting Mary Travers, Mary McCardle was her name, she actually went on to become a SPAD, a Special Advisor in Stormont, on a salary of over £100,000 a year. Now that caused great distress within the Northern Ireland community, and especially within this lady's family. And she did run a very effective campaign, and it now looks as if the Northern Ireland Assembly will as a whole, as part of a private members bill introduced by Jim Allister, the former MEP here, that they will now introduce legislation that anybody with a conviction for terrorist murder will not be able to be a special advisor within government. That's the way to go forward. We need to try and chip against this physical force tradition, this physical force ideology that conditions children. And I think unless we all do that together, the future is not bright for Northern Ireland. I think we can have a type of peace, but unless we really get to the roots of the problem, and that is the radicalisation of children into physical force violence, then the future's not good. Basically, that's it. With a few more slides there, but if you look at the way that the funding has panned out, you'll find that within unionism, the unionist community feels they've been treated very poorly indeed. Billy Hutchison, who represents the Shankle Road, which is a very it's a very sound, good working class loyalist area. People there feel they've been left behind. Whereas if you go to nationalist areas, they feel triumphant and emboldened. If you go to the victims of the violence, they feel ignored and even ostracised. And working class unionists from the Protestant community really do feel forgotten and left behind. And you will see the manifestation of anger whenever the Union flag was only allowed to fly on designated days in City Hall in Belfast. It's still going on from the 3rd of October. And I know Stuart Agnew was in Belfast that night giving a speech in Stormont, or participating in an agriculture debate. That was the night that whole series of riots and whatever started. And it's still ongoing. And in many ways, that has actually radicalised many young Protestant kids, people who would never have bothered, but they've seen the Union flag been taken where it flew 365 till only being allowed to fly on royal anniversaries and that type of thing. It was quite ironic that Sinn Féin voted to fly the flag on the Queen's birthday on City Hall. But that's my presentation. Again, I just have a sense of dread about this type of blatant radicalisation of children and what that holds for in the future, whenever the great bulk of people, both Protestant, Catholic, the people who really want to build a shared community, want to move forward, and the EU is actually damaging what we're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. Questions? Roger.
Thank you very much for that. I'm shocked. I had no idea that this kind of thing was going on. I was wondering if I could ask you to let me have a copy of your presentation,
yes,
on the basis of which I would produce a blog article, and I suspect that I and other colleagues might be interested in putting some questions based on your presentation to the European Commission.
Thank you very much. That's one of the main reasons we wanted to come.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Philip Molnar and I'm from Czech Republic, so I'm obviously not an expert on Northern Ireland issue. But when I see those pictures, I ask myself, who gave them those weapons to those kids, And so I was wondering, because in Czech Republic a few years ago we had problems with neo-Nazism, and some of the people were, some of those neo-Nazis, they were very disappointed how the things were going on for them. So at the end they decided they will try a different strategy, and I think they called it sleeping wolf strategy. And it was basically based on the fact that they will try to look like normal, ordinary people, and they will try to learn their kids to one day to follow, their way, and to one day when the situations change, when one day they might find a big, strong leader, they might go on fighting. So my question is, do you think that those weapons were given to those kids by the institution or paramilitant groups, or, I hate to actually think about it, or maybe their parents? Thank you.
The building that you see is called the Tycullian Centre, and that was funded by European Union money. The children in it are brought in as part of a youth group, apparently, and the weapons that they are handed are deactivated weapons, similar to the ones that were used in the violence in Northern Ireland to shoot police and soldiers and that type of thing. So it's Republican. It's organised through mainstream republicanism. Whenever there was another peace programme announced, and whenever it was announced by the Special Programmes Body, which is an EU agency, it was held in that building. And myself, as a councillor for that area, actually said, look, this is unacceptable, because there's going to be people hopefully applying for that funding who may have lost loved ones. And yet you expect, the European Union expects those people to go into that building for the launch of this project. And my views were ignored, because it does seem that the European Union does actually actively take the side of the Republican movement in Northern Ireland. If you look at the way grants are allocated, if you look at the innocent victims groups and how their funding has been denied completely or cut back to virtually nothing, and then you see this Councillor group, as Diane said, one of the primary groups for getting funding, it's actually frightening that something can be so corrupt and rotten.
Any more questions? Probably the last one now before we finish up for the day. No? Okay, well, I'd like to thank you all for coming here today. I think we've had some excellent presentations from two great speakers. I just hope that what you're left with is a bit of food for thought. Obviously, with talking about the issue of radicalisation within the Muslim community, specifically in the UK, and some of the lessons that we've learned here today, I think have been quite enlightening. And obviously, the issues that Henry has dragged up that still persist within Northern Ireland. So please go away, think about what's been said today, and if you are MEPs, please take some action upon it. And I'm sure that the two guys will be hanging around at the end to take any more questions in a personal capacity. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Michael, for organising today. And well done all round. Cheers.